The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the most enduring and complex conflicts in modern history. It is a conflict deeply rooted in historical claims, religious significance, and national identity. For over a century, this struggle has fueled violence, instability, and humanitarian crises in the region and beyond. Understanding its complexities is crucial for anyone seeking to comprehend the Middle East today. This essay will examine pivotal moments in the conflict, focusing on events from 1964 to 2021, to shed light on how we arrived at the current impasse. The conflict's origins are often traced back to the early 20th century, with competing claims to the same land. The Zionist movement, advocating for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, gained momentum, especially after the horrors of the Holocaust. At the same time, the Arab population in Palestine, who saw the land as their own, resisted the growing Zionist presence. This tension culminated in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and the subsequent displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. In the aftermath of the 1948 war, the Palestinian people found themselves scattered and without a unified voice. This changed in 1964 with the formation of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO.
Founded in Cairo, the PLO, under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, aimed to represent and advocate for the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and a state of their own. The PLO's initial goals were ambitious. They sought to liberate Palestine from Israeli control, initially through armed struggle. The organization gained international recognition and became a key player in regional politics, though its tactics, which sometimes included targeting civilians, drew international condemnation. The PLO's emergence marked a turning point. It signaled the emergence of a unified Palestinian national movement determined to fight for its rights and aspirations.
In 1967, tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors escalated into a full-blown conflict known as the Six-Day War. The war, lasting only 6 days, had far-reaching consequences. Israel emerged victorious, capturing the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights.
The war's outcome dramatically shifted the geopolitical landscape. Israel's territorial gains, including areas populated by Palestinians, further complicated the conflict and exacerbated the Palestinian refugee crisis. The war also had a profound psychological impact on both sides. For Israelis, it reinforced a sense of vulnerability and the need for security. For Palestinians, it solidified a sense of dispossession and fueled the struggle for liberation.
In 1973, on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. The Yom Kippur War, though lasting only 3 weeks, once again tested Israel's resolve. Despite initial setbacks, Israel managed to repel the attack and secure its borders.
The war had significant ramifications. It shattered the myth of Israeli invincibility, as demonstrated by the initial Arab successes. It also highlighted the human cost of the conflict, with heavy casualties on both sides. The war paved the way for diplomatic efforts, leading to disengagement agreements between Israel and Egypt and Syria.
Section 5. A Glimmer of Hope, the Camp David Accords and Tragedy. The late 1970s witnessed a glimmer of hope with the signing of the Camp David Accords in 1978. Brokered by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, the Accords saw Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem agree to a framework for peace.
The agreement led to the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty in 1979, a watershed moment in the conflict's history.
The Camp David Accords, while a diplomatic triumph, also exposed deep divisions within the Arab world. Egypt, the first Arab state to recognize Israel, faced severe criticism from other Arab nations.
Tragically, Sadat's bold move toward peace cost him his life. He was assassinated in 1981 by Islamic extremists opposed to any accommodation with Israel.
Section 6. Displacement and Defiance, the Palestinian Exodus and Lebanon. The 1980s witnessed further upheaval and displacement for the Palestinian people. The Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, aimed at expelling the PLO from its bases there, resulted in a brutal conflict and further displacement of Palestinian refugees.
The Lebanon War had a devastating impact on Lebanon, exacerbating its own internal strife. For the Palestinians, it represented another chapter of dispossession and exile.
The war also saw the rise of Hezbollah, a Shiite militia group opposed to Israel's presence in Lebanon, which would become a major player in the region. Section 7. Uprising and Dialogue, the First Intifada and the Oslo Accords. In 1987, a new chapter in the conflict unfolded with the eruption of the First Intifada. The Intifada, meaning shaking off in Arabic, was a sustained Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Characterized by civil disobedience, protests, and sometimes violent clashes, the Intifada captured global attention and put immense pressure on Israel.
The First Intifada proved to be a turning point. It forced Israel to acknowledge the Palestinian people's grievances and their desire for self-determination. It also paved the way for the Oslo Accords in the early 1990s, a series of agreements between Israel and the PLO that offered a glimmer of hope for a peaceful resolution. In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew its settlers and military from the Gaza Strip. The disengagement, while welcomed by many, also marked a period of growing internal Palestinian division.
Hamas, an Islamist group opposed to the Oslo peace process, gained influence in Gaza, ultimately seizing control of the territory in 2007.
The Hamas takeover of Gaza had significant consequences. It led to a split between the West Bank, governed by the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas-controlled Gaza. It also resulted in a blockade of Gaza by Israel and Egypt, citing security concerns, which had a devastating impact on the territory's economy and humanitarian situation. The years following the Gaza withdrawal witnessed several rounds of intense conflict between Israel and Hamas. In 2008, 2012, and 2014, Israel launched military operations in Gaza, citing rocket attacks and tunnel construction by Hamas.
These conflicts resulted in significant casualties on both sides, particularly among Palestinian civilians.
These conflicts further entrenched the cycle of violence and mistrust. They also led to widespread international condemnation of the high civilian death toll in Gaza. Efforts to broker a lasting ceasefire and revive the peace process have been largely unsuccessful, leaving the region mired in conflict and instability.
The international community has repeatedly called for an end to the violence and for renewed efforts towards peace. But achieving a lasting solution has proven to be incredibly challenging.
In 2021, tensions again escalated dramatically, culminating in a major conflict between Israel and Hamas in May. The trigger for this round of violence was a complex mix of factors, including tensions over land rights in East Jerusalem, clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and the planned evictions of Palestinian families from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood.
The 2021 conflict was marked by its intensity and the high number of civilian casualties. It also saw a surge in intercommunal violence within Israel, with clashes between Jewish and Arab citizens.
The conflict, while short-lived, left behind a trail of destruction and trauma, further dimming hopes for a negotiated solution. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains one of the most intractable conflicts in the world. Decades of violence, mistrust, and failed peace initiatives have left both sides physically and emotionally scarred.
The events from 1964 to 2021 illustrate the cyclical nature of the conflict, marked by periods of intense violence followed by fragile ceasefires and failed attempts at reconciliation.
As of 2024, the conflict continues to cast a long shadow over the region. Finding a lasting solution will require addressing the root causes of the conflict, including issues of security, land rights, refugees, and Jerusalem.
Until then, the cycle of violence and suffering is likely to continue, with devastating consequences for both Israelis and Palestinians.